Hey there! So today I'm going to be doing my August wrap-up, talking about all the books that I read in August. I have a lot to talk about, so without further ado, I'm going to leap into the first book. The first book that I read this month was Crown of Feathers by Nikki Pau-Prato. I don't have a physical copy as I read it on my Kindle. This book is about phoenix riders, which right off the bat was a huge lure for me. I love any kind of books that have to do with like flying magical creatures. So basically the plot of this book is that about 20-30 years before the start of the book, the Phoenix Riders were eradicated by this empire who they went to war with, and now about 20 years later, I think it might be less, these two sisters are kind of going around this kind of ravaged continent as fugitives. They're animages, so that's the magic that allowed the Phoenix Riders to bond with and kind of control, speak to their phoenixes. So it's illegal to be an animage, so they're basically on the run their whole lives. And they both dream of becoming Phoenix Riders, so at the start of the book, they've just managed to locate two unhatched phoenix eggs in an old cache, and they're trying to hatch them. So I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was an excellent first book in a trilogy. I think it's going to be a trilogy. The characters were amazing. The story moved along really well. There was a lot of kind of differentiation and things that were happening. The character relationships were brilliant. I just really enjoyed it overall, and I'm looking forward to the next one immensely. So next I'm going to be talking about an entire series, 5 books out of and eventually a 6-book series that I read this month, and that is the Red Rising series. So hopefully you can see all of these. This is going to give me one hell of a workout. So I started obviously with Red Rising at the start of this month. I kind of just felt like reading it, but then I thought, hey, why the hell not? I'd never actually finished the series before. I'd read the first 2, but I'd never read the 3rd, 4th, and 5th one. I don't have the 5th one because it's on my Kindle. So I just powered through these this month, and this has become one of my new favorite series. The first book is like 5 stars for me. The second book is 4.5 stars. Third book, 5 stars. Fourth book, 5 stars. And then the 5th book was another 4.5 star read for me. So consistently, I have loved every single one of these books. I love the writing style. The world is amazingly complex and it's built upon book. It's not overwhelming at all. But by the time you get to the 6th book, the world is just vast, amazing. So the basic plot of this series is that humanity it's in the far future of humanity, so about, I think, almost 2,000 years into the future. Humanity is basically kind of governed by this kind of solar system-wide power called the society, and within the society there's a sort of a hierarchy based on color. So red's at the bottom, gold at the top, and all the other colors in between, and each of them kind of have separate duties within that hierarchy. So reds are kind of the laborers, golds are the rulers, and then everybody in between kind of has their place. So the main character, Darrow, who we're introduced to in Red Rising, is a red. He's a miner on Mars, and he's been told his whole life that he and his fellow miners are preparing Mars. They're mining helium-3, which is needed for the terraforming process. They're preparing Mars for the rest of humanity, and once they do that, they're going to be rewarded. However, there's a dark secret underlying all of that, and when that comes to light, Darrow basically vows to take down the society, to take down gold, to remove this kind of hierarchy that causes so much suffering for him and his people. So yeah, I read this whole series this month up to the 5th book, and I absolutely loved it. Definitely pick it up if you haven't already, and if you're looking for some really good YA going into adult as it goes along sci-fi, this is definitely one to pick up. Okay, so the next book that I read was Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. This is the 2nd book in the Infernal Devices trilogy, which is set in Victorian London within the Shadowhunters world that Cassandra Clare established in A City of Bones, City of Ashes, etc. I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one, but I'm definitely going to be continuing on and finishing this series, and then hopefully moving on to the Dark Artifices series, which I hear is her best. So that was a 3.5 star read for me. Okay, so the next book that I read was 12 Kings in Sharakai by Bradley Beaulieu. This was a reread for me because I'm currently reading the second book this month, September. So I wanted to pick this one up again. This is one of my all-time favorite books now. This is a very underrated series, but it's very, very good. It's set in this kind of desert city called Sharakai, and the main character is Cheda. She's a pit fighter in these sort of arenas in the city where people, fight for the crowd's amusement and so forth. And she also runs packages for this sort of crime boss lord. And when she's running one of these packages, she discovers secrets buried in her own past that are now kind of colliding with very dark and dangerous things happening in Sharakai. So this book basically follows her kind of unraveling these mysteries in her past and in the present, and trying to take revenge on the 12 kings who rule Sharakai and who executed her mother when she was about 8 years old. So this book is amazing. It's kind of, the world is beautiful, and you kind of completely get lost in it. It's so full of like smells, tastes, so beautifully described. You can tell the author has a deep love for the world that he's created, and you can't help but fall in love with it as well. Cheda is an amazing female character, really strong. In fact, there's a lot of strong female characters in prominent positions. I almost think female characters outnumber male characters in this series from what I've read of it. I've almost finished the second book. So yeah, if you're looking for a new fantasy kind of set in sort of a desert sort of fantasy world, this is definitely one to take a look at. So I gave this 5 stars. The next book that I read was To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. This is a short novella. Basically, the plot is that humanity has kind of banded together in terms of the space program, and they're sending out colonists to planets that they know have some form of life, to catalogue this life and to see how living things survive on other planets, with an aim eventually to kind of colonizing the stars. So this book, I really, really enjoyed it. It is very short, which hurt me because I definitely could have read so much more of it. It's Becky Chambers is amazing at writing characters and character dynamics, and that was definitely a big focus of this book, as well as kind of the science and the philosophy surrounding the whole idea of colonizing, the whole idea of exploring other planets and interacting with other life, and the responsibilities that we have when doing that. So there were a lot of really interesting questions raised. It's a book that really kind of got me thinking and left me with a lot to mull over as well, even though, I could have read it for at least another 200 pages. So I gave this book either 3.5 or 4 out of 5 stars, purely based, the lower rating purely based on just that I could have read so much more of it, and then I think it would have been absolutely amazing as a longer book even. But it is very, very strong the way that it is, and it's definitely a nice, short, thought-provoking novella to pick up. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. The next 2 books that I read were Scythe and Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. I don't have Thunderhead, it's on my Kindle. So this book is again set in the future of humanity, where technology has gotten to a point that we've basically eradicated death, disease, famine, hardship, really, of any kind. So in this world, people basically just go on and on and on living, and as you can imagine, that raises the question, how do we control the population if it's not happening naturally anymore? And this book's solution to that are the scythes. So the duty of the scythes is to basically glean people, to go around and choose people who will die, even though there's no real natural way of just dying in this world anymore. So the 2 main characters in the book are 2 scythe apprentices who are kind of learning the ropes and grappling with all of the sort of moral and kind of personal things that come up when, you know, your job is killing people. So this book is, the two books I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I found them incredibly thought-provoking, incredibly well plotted. I loved everything that happened. I loved the interactions between the characters. I love the characters. The only reason I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 stars was that I'm not a big fan of the writing style, but that's just a personal preference thing for me. It affected my enjoyment of the book, but I still think these books are amazing and worth the hype that they have gotten. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars for both this Scythe and Thunderhead. The next book that I read this month was The Merciful Crow. Again, I'm forgetting the author's name because I don't have a physical copy of it. But this is a brand new release. I think it was the start of August or the very end of July that this came out. So I picked it up immediately and just kind of powered through it. I really, really enjoyed this book. The magic system was really interesting. So basically the main character, Phi, is a member of the crow caste. So society is split into castes with crows at the bottom and I think either phoenixes or peacocks at the top, and they're all the castes, different castes are named after birds, and they each have their own specific kind of magic. So the crow magic is that they can use the teeth of witches and I think ordinary people from the other castes to access their type of magic. So first off, that's really interesting. And I think it's explored and executed very well in the book. The plot, the duty of the crows is to go around and remove plague victims and deal with plague victims, as they're the only caste who can't be affected by the plague, something that the other castes absolutely despise them for because they see it as a sign of like that they're sinners, that they're bad people. So the crows are basically second-class citizens. They're at the bottom of the food chain. And the plot of the book is that the crows are called to the royal palace to collect the crown prince and his bodyguard, who have apparently died of the plague. Turns out they haven't. They're just trying to escape the palace and their evil stepmother queen, who wants to basically remove them from the line of succession. Well, not them, just the crown prince, but obviously his bodyguard's going to have something to say about that. So the book then basically is them making a deal with the crows to bring them to somewhere where they'll be safe. And the rest of the book is kind of them fleeing and trying to find safety, trying to find allies to help them. And kind of Phi is the main character that we see all of this through, and she has very mixed feelings about this because the crows are obviously very mistreated, and as a result she's not a big fan of the higher castes, and she doesn't sometimes really see why she should help them, and they put the crows in a lot of danger, obviously, by asking for their help. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's a very strong beginning to a YA series, which I'm glad to see because there have been a few weak starts lately with a few of the other books that I've read. So I really enjoyed this one, and it's one that you should definitely pick up because crows, teeth magic, and like awesome characters, definitely one to look at. So the next book that I read was a reread for me. Obviously, as you can see, the book is sellotaped together. The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I'm rereading the First Law trilogy in anticipation of the sequel trilogy, which is coming out in the middle of September, the 19th. It's A Little Hatred. So it's a sequel series to this. I'm not going to go too much into describing this book because it's exceptionally difficult to describe the plot, since it's wholly kind of based around the characters, and it's difficult to describe the plot without going into a whole lot of detail. But just know that this is a 5-star book. It's one that I've loved since I was probably 15 and that I still love many years later. So it kind of has appealed to me throughout the ages. And so I gave this 5 stars yet again. I'm almost finished the second one at the moment, and I'll hopefully be reading the third one before the next obviously comes out in the middle of September. Okay, so finally the last book that I read this month was Lifelike by Jay Kristoff. I don't have a physical copy of it, it's on my Kindle. This is a YA sci-fi series set again, in the near future of humanity, where climate change has basically destroyed the earth and people are living with the after effects of that. And there are AIs like automatons, and lifelikes are these extremely advanced, very human-like automatons. And basically the main character, Eve, she battles kind of these big mech bots in what's called the War Dome to make money for her grandfather's medicine because he has cancer. And at the start of the book, she's on her way home from the War Dome and she sees a ship crash land. She goes to scavenge it and discovers that there's a lifelike with injured in the ship, and she decides, oh, this seems valuable, I'll bring it home, which turns out to be not a good idea at all. And the book basically goes on from there. I absolutely adored this book. I love everything that I've read by J. Kristoff, and this was no exception. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm going to be picking up the next one as soon as possible. It's only just come out, I think, last month. So yeah, it was a really good reading month for me. I'm very happy with all the books that I read. Okay, so that's it for my August wrap up. If there's anything, if you'd like to see me go in depth on more on any of these books, just let me know down in the comments, and I'll be happy to do longer reviews for any of them, because I'm definitely able to gush about any of these books. I thought they were all pretty solid this month. I had a great month of it. So yeah, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon.